videos on. So for today's topic, we decided to chop them up into small items. So first one, we're going to do a bit of an introduction of ourselves, and second, we're going to talk about the client, what were the different requirements, what was the project overview, and also why we decided to go with the decoupled approach for this project. And finally, we're going to dive deeper into the technical side. We're going to discuss what are the benefits of doing such an approach, what are the advantages, what were the challenges, and most importantly, what are the lessons that we learned along the way. And so I forgot to actually introduce myself. My name is Don, and I'm a Drupal developer for Evolving Web. I think I love doing a lot of Drupal work, but I always end up sometimes hating it. But yeah, it's a constant love-hate relationship with it, and I'm sure a lot of you would also feel the same way. And yeah, that's me.
My name is Olha. I am project. Yeah, okay. Now it's Olha? Yeah, great. So my name is Olha. I am project manager at EvolveDrupal, and I'm eager to share our experience implementing Drupal approach into this project. So, but before diving into discussion about implementation of the decoupled Drupal approach into this project, let me actually introduce you to the client. So because before initiating any project, it's crucial to gain a comprehensive understanding about the client, their goal, objectives, their principle they uphold and advocate for, or even fight for. So our client is Decoupled. You may hear this client name because Morgan just showed you the amazing design that we did for this client. Let me sum up. So Decoupled is an app that allows users depending on their state or their birth control, emergency contraception, UTI treatment, and abortion pill for home and pregnancy delivery. And Planned Parenthood is part of a bigger organization called Planned Parenthood. So it's a non-profit organization that provides reproductive health, healthcare, sex education, and information to the million of people in the United States and worldwide. So actually, Planned Parenthood is the largest single provider of the reproductive healthcare and health services, and the single largest provider of the abortion in the United States. Okay, let's move to our goals and objectives for this project. So we work closely with Planned Parenthood, and our goal was to build mobile-first Drupal project that drives people to download the app. So, and also our goal was to provide a smooth content editor experience that allows content to be easily updated and changed. Of course, build a very beautiful design to make it more attractive for the young audience. All right, and actually, what is decoupled, right? So, decoupled Drupal combined with Next.js refers to the web development architecture where Drupal serves as the backend content management system, while Next.js handles content presentation layer. So, what is the difference between traditional setup and decoupled Drupal setup? In traditional setup, Drupal handles both frontend and backend. In the decoupled setup, Drupal is responsible mostly for the backend part, and it's like the content repository that serves both for it can serve both for the mobile and for the website. And no, I want to go more on the coupled. Sorry, and also. Next.js is the React framework that offers features like server-side rendering and static site generation, and rich development environment, among others. When combined with Drupal, the decoupled architecture, Next.js becomes responsible for fetching the data via Drupal API, processing it, and render it to the front end. And why we actually choose the coupled approach for the PPD project? So, first of all, is the security, because given the context of our client and the hostile political climate, our client wanted something to be very, like, the website to be very secure. And using the coupled approach, we can achieve this because from time can be always online while we may receive any cyber attack to the backend, right? And then the next point was multi-channel publishing. Yeah, so basically, the content stored in Drupal can serve to multiple platforms and devices, such as mobile app. So since Planned Parenthood Direct is an app, so our client wanted the content to be used both on the website and on the mobile as well. And yeah, and Don will review more on benefits using the coupled approach.
Yep, and thank you all for a very well descriptive description of our client and why we decided to go with the Decoupled website. First of all, anybody here has already worked on the Decoupled website? Nice. Okay, good. So see number of hands here, number of people who has already worked on them, and I'm sure that we all agree on some of the benefits. So that's always been mentioned that the Decoupled website is a lot more performance, more efficient, optimized, more secure. But in reality, a regular Drupal website can also achieve such levels, right? It does seem a bit easier for a Decoupled website to do so, but there are other benefits other than those, which I would like to actually focus more on. We all know that those are all been said before. So one of the things that I would like to focus on is how the Decoupled website, it's not only your product that's going to be decoupled, but it's also your team. You can imagine that you have a front-end development team working almost semi-independently from our back-end development team. There's no reason for the front-end to stop work while waiting for the back-end to apply all their different configurations. They could simply start bootstrapping their code, making sure all the boilerplates are in place, designing the templates, designing the components. And with all the different frameworks that we have now that focuses on component-driven sites, I think front-end would have this freedom that static Drupal that you won't be able to do if your website is developed using a regular Drupal site. All this Drupalisms, templates, restrictions, it all goes away in a Decoupled website, especially for the front end. At the same time, the back end really doesn't need to worry about how will the front end render this. No, it's going to be mostly focused on what I feel is Drupal's most powerful area, which is content management. It now allows the backend to focus on making sure that the content structure is sensible. It's going to be something that can be reused across different platforms. Right? Another thing that is actually good about the Decoupled website is, as Ola mentioned, for a company such as Planned Parenthood Direct, we're going to expect some attacks, especially from people who just necessarily have to do their reviews. Right? And just like when you're working, sometimes you're eating and you're programming, right? We're only using one bug, but the Decoupled website, you could continuously serve web pages to their users while, let's say, you're backend doing something else, maybe some important scheduled jobs, some important processing, and they wouldn't be bogged down by having just one resource. Right? And in the Decoupled website, another thing is that, and I think this is the thing that I like the most about this architecture, is that you keep your CMS pristine. Right? In a state where you almost don't need to write any custom code. Right? Maybe a couple of modules, but it's pristine in the sense that when you want to upgrade the future, you won't end up with too much worry. Right? You'll be able to trust the community that Like they'll move the project forward to make sure that the recent updates are in there, and all you have to do is to make sure that that you apply those updates, and that you obviously do the testing. Of course, it's not only good things, but also going to be disadvantages in working or developing a decoupled website. Well, one of the disadvantages in the very beginning is obviously that you're going to expect a lot more complication. It's going to be it's going to be a really, really complex project. Okay? And it's not going to be for all websites. So you have to really take into consideration what you want to do in that website. Do you really need a mechanism that allows you to publish once, create once and publish everywhere? It's not for if you want to see the website going that direction, then it's probably best to not even go with the development website because of the complications that will come later on. Another disadvantage I see is that on the project management side, project managers would approach it that it's actually two different projects instead of one. Right? You could be managing a separate team located elsewhere, a separate team doing something else. And if you all seen what a JSON API response looks like, you'll know that it's extremely verbose. That's a bunch of metadata that you don't necessarily need. Right? If you try to make sense of it, it's a bit hard to do it. So it's opinionated in that way, but it's also it's also good because it does stop things like shedding. Right? So if you already have your API written for you, the standards written for you. And when I was talking about the technical debt earlier, it basically just moved to the front end. But I think this is the best place to have that. Maybe because front end they move in such a rapid pace that even though we try to minimize technical debt, 2-3 months from now there's going to be this new upgrades, this new kind of thing that you would end up considering, or maybe there's going to be some breaking change in that front end framework that you're using. So when we're developing this project, and when we did some decoupled projects before as well, we've noticed common challenges that it's going to be that you will encounter for all decoupled websites. The first challenge that we found was about routing. So we found there's mainly two options for routing. It's either you route using the front end or you let your CMS do the routing for you. In the first approach, where it's basically the front end will keep the routing intact, it's mostly going to be code driven. Right? You'll probably end up with some static errors in there, but you can always make a part of it to be dynamic. It's a lot simpler to implement for sure, but it's also less flexible. Second option is where it's going to be using the backend to store the different routes, and I think this is one of the probably the most flexible option that you come up with. It also uses a lot of built-in Drupal features. So in this approach, it's going to be a bit more complicated. Basically, you have to make sure that your front end has a sort of like a catch-all route. And that what that catch-all route does, it does two things. First of all, it has to resolve the path. And to do that, you can use a module called Decoupled Router. You basically ask the Decoupled Router, what does this path, what's the content or entity associated to this path? And what it will do is that it will return to you an entity UUID. And using that entity UUID, you can then send another request to actually get the data that you actually need. So we think, oh no, it's two requests. going to be basic for it. But fortunately, there's actually multiple sub-requests where you can use to combine those two requests into one, making it more efficient. Actually, the good thing about Decoupled Drupal is that if you do have redirects, if you have, if you're using path auto, it will resolve properly, even if it's an old path. As long as it's in the system, it will return you the entity ID that the event will point to. Another challenge that we observe is how do you handle merge requests? How do you send merge requests? So JSON API specs tells us how to ask the system to return relationships, how to ask the system to return specific fields. Right? So that's the first option, is that you let front end decide on what it needs. And it allows you to actually end up with a very small response. So JSON API, huge response, but if you actually know what you want, you can end up with a very small JSON API response. But again, it's also a bit more complicated because you have to make sure that your front-end developers do understand the JSON API specs, and it's all well documented. The second option is to use modules in Drupal to automatically include the relationships that you need and all the things that you need. And all the front-end needs to is pass the entity UID and will receive everything. All the relationships, no matter how deep they are, you'll be able to do that. But the problem with this one is that you end up with such a huge response, huge JSON API response. But maybe in today's world where caching is so efficient, it might not be an issue anymore. Right? But it could be an issue if you obviously try to read it. I don't recommend anyone trying to debug such a huge response. Oh, by the way, for you to be able to do that, you will need the JSON API extras plus the JSON API default module. So responses. So we talked about JSON API. Also advised against reading the JSON API response yourself. So probably want to make sure that you normalize that response, making it much more readable. So instead of having this sort of flat, like a flat response, you could end up with a nested structure. It shows the different relationships a lot easier. Another thing that you could, another thing that you should also consider is that for front end, there are different ways on how you would want to propagate your data from your most top level component all the way to your deepest component. Instead of you do state management, there's a lot of options out there. If you're using UJS, you have Kenya, and if you're using React, you obviously have built-in state management already. You want to go native, you can use local storage, and so on. Or you could, obviously do property drilling, where you make sure your components have open up certain properties and parameters and have those passed to them. I would recommend going with the state management though. It just makes getting the data that you need a lot easier for the components that you need them. Yes, multilingual support. Right. So good thing, right? So Drupal, very good at multilingual. It's built in, and all you need to do is make sure that you decide on how you negotiate your language. There's a lot of options there. You can pass the language in the URL, you can pass it in the query stream, you can cookies, right? So usually end up with just passing the language along with the URL. So just a lot easier, and you can trust that Drupal will return you the translated content. And if you don't have any translated content, you always go back to the default language of the site that what you configured your site to be. And yeah, you can always also be sure to use sub-requests, Decoupled Drupal, in case you want to in case you have a translated path, so you could have a path in English, but maybe for SEO purposes, or because you're required to do so, you can have your path in French or in some other language. And decoupled router would actually still return you the entity that it is associated with. Preview, one of the hardest challenges to solve in the past 2 years, 2 or 3 years, but it's come a long way. First option I would recommend is the easiest option. Ask the clients to use their imagination. Maybe it's not really what they see, what they should get, but more what they need is actually what they should get. And trust that the structure, their content would give them the thing that they actually want. Because imagine if you are a website that publishes to different platforms, it could be a kiosk, it could be an app, it could be a web, it would all look different anyway, right? So what's the use of preview? Now, I find that this option to be at a 99% rate of failure. So it would really depend on what your client needs are. So we have two other options. We could have a staging content or a staging site where you stage your content and let the client review them, let the QA go through them, or something that we've always been using before is to render the preview in an iframe. And it does involve some complexity in it. Number one, unpublished content is not accessible to an anonymous user. So you have to make sure that you have configured the correct revisions. You have created a role purely used for previewing unpublished content. You have to authorize your requests. So those are some of the things that you have to kind of consider. And it does require some custom code for you to implement it. And yeah, I think at that time, custom code was mostly to, again, get the necessary tokens so that you'll be able to preview the content. Alright, the content changes. There are two models right now that also feel the same thing. We have webhooks and also buildhooks. They do things a bit differently, but the principle is the same. Simply an endpoint where you have to call, and what it does is that it will rebuild your content website. So it also depends on the type of content website that you're building. We'll go deeper into that a bit later. And yep, here we go. So now that we've learned about the challenges and have them in mind, I hope that everyone's going to be more prepared into how they could handle them. And we're going to go through some of the things, some of the steps that you take, make sure that you're prepared when building a decoupled website.
Yeah, and we will start with budget and a timeline. So what is my budget, right? So developing for the decoupled architecture, more complicated than traditional Drupal project. That added complexity leads to longer development cycles, impacting the timeline and budget. So, and by the way, hosting the decoupled project requires more cost, especially if you use separate solution for the backend and frontend. So yeah, please, as a project manager, you always need to consider those complexities before the project starts to avoid any challenges ongoing. To be prepared, also make sure you allocated resources and right resources to your project. So yeah, the decoupled projects require more specialized knowledge compared to traditional Drupal development. So make sure you involve right minds, both for Drupal backend and your chosen frontend technology. Yeah, and hosting provider. So absolutely, the hosting environment is an important aspect of the decoupled Drupal project. So evaluate if your current hosting provider can support the decoupled Drupal architecture in the very beginning. And yeah, let's move forward with content model.
Yeah, I just want to add that it's also important that you have the correct resources in place. And I just want to say that I'm very lucky that Ola was project managing the whole thing. And she was very eager to learn about Decoupled and very open to it. And, she did a lot of reading on her own. And, we're very lucky to have her as a project manager. But yeah, earlier today I was saying that you could end up with a Decoupled team. And for that team to work, it's always good to plan ahead. And content modeling, make sure that your content is documented. It's very important. Because that way, I said, the front end didn't need to actually wait for the back end to complete. With this kind of document, they'll be able to proceed ahead. Making mock responses, developing your templates and components. And we also try to find a standard in terms of how we would structure our front end. Inspired by how Drupal does it, we end up with components that actually are named similar to how Drupal would name its template. So imagine you have an entity called an article entity type. So in the front end, we're going to have node-article. Right, or a paragraph dash, maybe hero banner. So we'll end up with those kinds of files. And what those files do is essentially what a preprocessing function would do. It would prepare the variables needed for the template. So we have a separate directory where it's named UI, and under that UI is the actual components that's mainly focused on how something looks like. So it's very inspired by how Drupal even works. All right, and here's where it does get a bit. Really depends on the project that you're going to do. Right now, there's three main types of front-end applications that you can end up with. First being the SPA. Everything lives on the browser side. It's very, very, very front-end driven. It's very interactive. It's going to be fast, but it might not be very good in SEO. And then you have SSR, or server-side rendered. What's good about this is that it's going to be very good in SEO, but it's also you still need a backend for this one. Right? But it's written in a language that front-end developers are much more familiar with. And then we have the SSG, where it's statically generated. So every time you build a site, you already have your full website with you, deploy it somewhere, and could be indefinitely cached. And it's also going to be good in SEO. Obviously, we found that the SSG is the most performant. But the problem with it is that it depends on how critical your content is, how time sensitive it is. Because every time your content changes, it's not going to reflect until you rebuild your front-end website. For time sensitive content, we would recommend either going with an SDA application, with an SDA type, or an SSR kind of front end. There's this new thing from the Next.js community. It's called ISR, or incremental static regeneration. And it's very interesting. So what it does is that it's able to build the pages that are outdated. And the only problem about this is that you have to make sure that your hosting providers support it. Oh yeah, and also separation of concerns. You have to decide: are you going to go with a thick client and a thin server, or a thin server, or a thin client and a thick server? So what's the difference? It's just about who does most, who does more. Right? Would your business logic fall into the server side area, or you handle it over the front end side? And you have to think about this, because if you want a pristine CMS in the end, then most likely you would either upload it to the front end, or if you want to get fancy with it, you can have a middle where a lot of the business processing happens. You will pull different types of data and return it in just one response, and that front end to basic rendering. So a lot of ways to actually do this, and so far we found that we're really liking the paid client and clean server approach. We also have to think that in terms of resources, compared to backend developers, there's more front-end developers out there. So that opens up a lot of options for you in terms of your front-end. CI/CD is something that I think should always be thought about in the very beginning before even writing a single line of code, especially in a decoupled website. I think CI/CD, it's just more important in that kind of architecture. You wouldn't want to, it's just hard to debug a decoupled website if you don't have any automations in place. And having automations in place in the very beginning, I'm sure it's going to be very beneficial to you up until the end. And yep, we have some honorable mentions in terms of the Drupal modules. I've mentioned numerous times decoupled router, sub requests, JSON API friends, JSON API menu items, JSON API extras and defaults. Some things that were not mentioned here. Consumer, simple auth, consumer image styles, all those are modules that you might be interested in if you start building decoupled websites. Oh, yeah, and other tips, yes, you can use consumer image styles. What it does is basically returns you a list of different images that are already processed based on your existing image styles. With that, you'll be able to get front end, do the thinking and decide which one of those image styles is the most appropriate style to use. There's also, limit your paragraphs or entity references as much as possible to 2 to 3. If you're gonna end up reading JSON API response for some reason, having not too deep references would definitely help. And yeah, for security reasons, it would also be good to disable any JSON API resources that we do not need. And there are a lot of solutions out there that's developed by the community that makes building decoupled websites so easy. For if you're a React developer, if your team are mostly React developers, there's Next.js for Drupal. If you're more the Vue camp, there's also Drux, and for Next.js. And I think that's it for the preparations. And now over to the learnings. First of all, what I learned in building decoupled websites. First, I was very scared, right? So decoupled, what is it, right? But even before that, the earlier term was much more scarier, right? You get this, right? It sounds a bit morbid, right? But now, decoupled sounds a bit like a buzzword. It sounds very challenging. And so we have to embrace that the challenge that comes with it. It also enriches your options. Basically, we're not stuck with just saying, we're not stuck with just developing a regular Drupal website. All of us has their own learnings.
Yeah. So at the last part of our presentation, we would like to share our learnings. So again, prioritize clarity in budget and timeline before start working on the decoupled Drupal project. So basically, the key for your success for this project, as Don mentioned, even with the multilingual support in the traditional Drupal, it's just core, but here we needed to have more, to add more effort to create multilingual support. So yeah, as a project manager, prioritize this prior to development. And moving to engage the right minds. So I want to also mention that we were lucky to have Don on this project as well, because he's a very skilled senior developer that know both Drupal and Next.js. Yeah, teamwork makes the dream work, right? Also, client need to be aware of what is the couple and what are the challenges that we will have down the line when developing the Decoupled Drupal projects. And yeah, evaluate if your housing provider can support the decoupled architecture in the very first step. Very important, just a reminder, prioritize this consideration early in the project. And yeah.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this before, content modeling, super important, making sure that your information structure is sound and sensible, it's super important. Another thing that I would like to add to what Olha mentioned is that in terms of learnings, if you have someone who is familiar with Drupal, really strong at it, you'll be able to recreate, because in the Decoupled website, you'll have to recreate a few things that Drupal already does very well, reviewing, user authentication, all those are things that you have to recreate on the front end. So having, just to reiterate, having the right mindset, having the right resources in your teams is super important. Another lesson is that, avoid deeply nested references. So in the front end, we have what we call callback file. In Drupal, we have reference cell. And of course, it's not all or nothing. In the past, EvolveDrupal conference, I talked about the progressively decoupled website where you combine, a regular site with areas in it that's very dynamic, uses a lot of modern front-end technologies in there. And I think Suzanne also showed some of those as the ELA home-based project. And yeah, take advantage of the decoupled development experience. It's not only your product that will end up decoupled, the way that you think, hopefully not the way that you think, now that you know that it's bad. The way that you organize your team, making them asynchronous, that's I think is an efficient way of building a decoupled website. And that's the last of our slides. In conclusion, I know it sounds a bit generic, but it really depends on the project that you're building, whether or not you go for a decoupled approach or not. Evaluate it very well. There are some things that's going to be hard to go back after you decided, so careful about that. If in doubt, I would say it's better to go decoupled first and then go to a regular Drupal site if you don't find any need for it. As opposed to developing a regular Drupal site and finding out, no, I need actually the decoupled site. Because if you go with the decoupled site, you're actually focusing on the content first, focusing on how it will look like.
And so just to add to those words, Decoupled Drupal combined with Next.js offers very flexible and advanced solutions. And as a wrap up to this case study, let's remember digital landscape is ever evolving, and it's up to us to adapt and push the boundaries of what is possible. And yeah, thank you for your attention. We are happy to answer your questions. Yeah. Some exercise.
Thank you for that presentation. It's really detailed. I was curious, when you were talking about preview, you listed 3 options. Obviously, using your imagination are option number 1 is not that desired. But you did a good job of explaining option 2 and option 3, but I didn't hear you say which one you guys decided to ultimately go with. I'd love to know why.
Yeah, so option 1 almost always a failure when it's time to use that. But we end up almost mostly with option 3, where we still provide them previews in the icon. Oh, and what was the second question?
I guess questions are coming from the back here. I guess I had a question for you just in terms of support. From the client side, it's just do they have front-end resources that are available to support the decoupled solution, or are they coming back to your team in terms of supporting that architecture?
An excellent question. So earlier I said that in terms of talent, if you just go through the previous Stack Overflow annual report, you see that there's an overwhelming number of front-end developers in there, making that kind of resource become cheaper than back-end developers. So clients, I don't think they would have any hesitation in building a team that would be mostly consistent of front-end developers and maybe having one or two. Not even Drupal developers. If you have pristine, Drupal CMS, don't need a back-end developer. What you need is a site builder, which something that so that is able to achieve, to train for, and then to add to that. So far, yes, our clients do have their own content team. We would end up teaching them some of the things, back-end maintenance. Right now, they're evolve to us. If they do get the expertise of a site builder, that's enough to get them going.
Yeah, but our client, of course, has expertise, but the whole website has been built by our team. So it's like just good add-on for client, like the client has the team.
This was, we have talked about this, but is Drupal's concept just on the JavaScript front end, or is it also on some of the
So specifically for this client, yes, and that's precisely why we also went for a decoupled approach, that eventually we want more and more of the app content to be coming from the website that makes it easier to manage. Right now, not all of the content that gathers from the CMS, a small portion of it, but yeah, it's a hope that by being able to do content model in the beginning, validating that content model, we end up with a structure that's not tied to a website or presentation layer, but it's very flexible and can be used almost anywhere.
Just to add for our project, they are willing to use FAQs both for website and mobile. So that was specifically for the website.
Hi, I'm Miranda. Have you found that there can be a blurring between the front end and the it does seem to happen on projects where clients will occasionally want controls in the back end stronger than the front end. So the presentation ends up becoming so tied to the back end that it feels less sensitive. How do you handle that kind of situation?
Yeah, it's a common issue, and unfortunately, it's really trying to inform the client that data, as much as possible, should contain information about how it should look like. It's supposed to be up to the consumer app, whatever is it that consumes the data. It's up to that to infer what it should look like, or whether it should be up to that to present that data. That being said, we try to minimize that information as much as possible to things that we can control. So for example, a fixed list of styles, a fixed list of colors. We try to minimize it to maybe only one, and then we can decide, okay, I received a color. Right, let's just give an example. Some of the background is blue, we have the field blue. What does it mean? Right? This color. It's going to be up to the app to say, okay, should I use this blue for the background and make sure that the font is going to be a color that's that will make it readable. It's going to be a constant back and forth, and it's going to really depend on your experience, and we try to to stop those kinds of requests from creeping in. And so far we've done a good job, but we've also allowed some flexibility in terms of how components will look like. Because it's also the beauty of having using Drupal is that the way that you structure content is so easy, it's a matter of clicks, that
you can look at paragraphs or components as not just data, not just raw data, but also represent, you know, a component along with how it looks, how it should act. So yeah, I mean, I know it's a very broad answer, but I hope that has some details based on our experience.
Thank you so much. We can chat more later. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you both.